When a band loses its original singer and charismatic frontman, it can be tough to move on. Some bands survive it, some bands don't. Some bands pick up guys from the outside, and sometimes it works, like AC/DC picking up the new guy after old Bon Scott died. To some extent, Van Halen picking up Sammy Hagar, but I don't necessarily like any of his stuff very much. And sometimes it really doesn't, like Sublime picking up Rome, Queen picking up Paul Rogers, and other atrocious incidents, including some farther down the road in the Genesis discography. Or you can go the Pink Floyd route, which is what Genesis did, is promote somebody from within the ranks to become lead singer. Specifically, Genesis wrote the music for this album, and then after auditioning, a bunch of people realized, hey, Phil Collins used to sing along with Peter Gabriel. Half of the stuff on The Lamb Lies Down on Broadway is Phil Collins singing along with Peter Gabriel. Why don't we just have him be the lead singer? And so it happened that the much loathed, much detested, much reviled Phil Collins era Genesis began rather auspiciously, in my opinion, with, honestly, kind of a Genesis classic, A Trick of the Tail.
Boy, if you don't stop listening to that metal, you'll be burning in hell dancing on the volcano.
Right away, when it starts off on Dance on a Volcano, you can tell it's going to be a very different album from Lamb Lies Down on Broadway, and for someone like me who wasn't crazy about that album, that's a pretty good thing. But overall, Dance on a Volcano is pretty cool. The guitar is really good. The vocals are they're a lot like Peter Gabriel's on Trespass, but the vocals are good, but that's not what we care about here, it's the music. And the music is pretty good.
Oh shit, this isn't a heavy metal review. Track 2, Entangled. Oh.
Entangled is kind of a pretty, acoustic guitar-laced, gentle pastoral sort of song about, I can't really tell what it's about besides there's some jabs at the medical industry and various other things, and it sounds like something that Peter Gabriel would have sung, and it's very true what I said on the Wind and Wuthering episode, where I said that, the early Phil Collins era is all about trying to copy what Peter Gabriel did, with varying levels of success, and here I would say it was actually pretty successful. But that comparison to Trespass is really borne out, because this song reminds me of something that could have been from Trespass.
Track 3, Squonk.
Squonk is maybe my favorite song on this album, and one of the true Genesis classics from the very early Phil Collins era. Reportedly, this is the attempt to get a Genesis song to sound like Kashmir, because they loved the drum beats in Kashmir and wanted that sort of driving sound to be in a Genesis song, and I would say it kind of works. Lyrically, it's about this mythical creature from the American hinterland of the 19th century that would supposedly dissolve into tears when it was captured.
Track 4, Madman Moon.
Madman Moon, I'm not as big a fan of. Lyrically, musically, it gets a little iffy to me. The first time I listened to it, I hated it. The next couple times, it's grown on me, but it's still not a favorite from this album. I like what comes next much more.
Track 5, Robbery, Assault and Battery.
Robbery, Assault, and Battery is essentially a Phil Collins version of the sort of thing that Peter Gabriel used to do, what with switching rapidly between characters, doing different voices, and his absence is really felt. This is a great song with Phil Collins doing it, but it could have been a phenomenal song with Peter Gabriel doing it, because the guitar's amazing, the synths are amazing, the bass playing is amazing. Unlike Wind and Wuthering, they really used Steve Hackett to the best of his abilities on this, and it shows.
Track 6, Ripples.
Ripples is a really interesting song, again, much like Entangled. Very reminiscent of something that would have been off of really Trespass. Like I said, there is a part of, I believe it was either Dusk or Stagnation that really reminds me of Ripples, and they reprise it again. The theme, one of the main themes of Fading Lights is very similar to Ripples as well. It's probably one of the best songs from the sessions for this album, and it has one of the best and really one of the last amazing Steve Hackett guitar solos in a Genesis song.
Track 7, A Trick of the Tail.
A Trick of the Tail is kind of low-key musically, but lyrically it's really interesting. It tells the story of the character on the cover. And by the way, I think this is the last great Genesis cover. I like some of the later ones, but they're never as good as this again. This devil-looking creature who ventures from a city of gold out into our world is locked up and displayed as a curiosity, and then tries to lead people back to the city of gold, but disappears before he can show people where it is. Or maybe because he doesn't want people to show him where he is, because people have been dicks to him.
Track 8, Los Endos.
Los Endos is a really cool song, instrumental except for a tiny bit at the end. It really brings together all the pieces on this album, and even a song or two that wasn't on this album, and reprises the themes. At first, it reprises bits of Entangled, Robbery, Assault, and Battery, to a lesser extent Ripples, and then it goes into Dance on a Volcano, and finally ends with probably the best part of the song to me, which is a really amazing instrumental reprise of Squonk, which ends with Phil Collins singing some of the parts of Sure as Eggs is Eggs from Supper's Ready, of There's an Angel Standing in the Sun, supposedly as a tribute to Peter Gabriel. This album is actually pretty good. It's a total departure from Lamb Lies Down on Broadway, reverting back to the pre-Lamb styles of Genesis, and overall, in a lot of ways, it feels like a weaker version of Selling England by the Pound, but I'm okay with that, because Selling England by the Pound was the best Genesis album, in my eyes. And this is pretty good. I mean, this is maybe the second or third best Phil Collins Genesis album. I would say this is like the second best Genesis with him. I mean, Duke has its own identity. That's why I give that the preference. But this is the last, like, if you are not a hardcore fan, this is the last essential Genesis album of the 70s. Like, this is the last one that has a lot of really amazing, phenomenal standout songs. Like, now I'm for getting all the albums from an artist, so naturally, if you can, get them. But if you only want the best, this is the last one that you really need to get in the 70s, because Wind and Wuthering and Then There Were Three are good, but they are substantially weaker than this album.